I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you. And actually, what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me. Today, I'm so excited to talk to Brin'na Rollins Williams. Brenna was one of Target's youngest female senior directors, managing over $500 million of sales annually, and she was seemingly a huge success story. However, as we know, success on the outside doesn't always translate to a feeling of success. And Brenna was holding it together by taking anxiety meds every few hours just to literally survive and to avoid having to end up in the ER with a heart attack. And this was all at the age of just 32. So today, I really want to dive into corporate culture, leadership, and what we're doing to our teams by living and operating this way. So a huge welcome, Brenna. And I'd love to start by asking you how your definition of success has evolved from then to now.
Yes. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on this platform. It is very near and dear to my heart, and I love the work that you do and the conversations that I have been able to listen to from my home too. So I think the easiest way to put my definition of success, it has completely changed and evolved in the very best of ways. So I would say that my initial definition of success was so tied into my career achievements, promotions, financial results. I focused on hitting targets, no pun intended, but hitting the targets and leading the team. And I realized after time that my professional achievements alone did not translate or correlate into what success actually should feel like. And that includes having a sense of personal fulfillment, having inner peace, and making a lasting impact in the lives of others. And so current day, success has completely rewritten itself for me. And it's about creating a legacy. It's about living with purpose, and it's your own purpose. And that for me is through being authentically me, protecting my well-being, and striving for professional excellence without sacrificing your personal peace and your personal well-being. I think success, a lot of times, it's led from the heart. That's what true fulfillment looks like. And in a career, it is often out of balance because we go against our values and our goals. And you can integrate both. And that is what I am doing now.
Amazing. I can really resonate with what you're saying, and that sort of going home at the end of the day and thinking, why do I feel so unfulfilled? You know, all the boxes are being ticked in terms of moving up the career ladder and making that progress. So why doesn't it feel like I thought it was going to feel? So I really resonate with that. And that said, I'm sure so many people would look at your career trajectory and, you know, from the start of your career up till your early 30s, and they'd have this huge amount of awe and admiration, maybe even jealousy for what you were creating in your life. So what would you like to say to them? Maybe that 20-year-old who's just starting on that path. What would you like to say to them?
That's a great question. And I agree. I think the picture perfect illusion of what life looks like, while yes, my career path looks and was very impressive from the outside. And I think what people don't see, and part of that is my own comfortability level with what I felt like I could share at certain times of my career and in my life, but it came with a lot of hidden struggles. which now I can share what that looks like, from anxiety and an anxiety attack and just being a high performer that is always on, to leading to panic attacks or sweating, waking up in the middle of the night in a pool of sweat and battling depression. And innately, that's not who I am as a person. And anyone that knows me in my life would tell you the same thing. That I think as you enter the workforce and you want to drive a successful life, you have to be able to define what success looks like and feels like for you, and not allow it to be at all imprinted from other people's expectations or definitions or thoughts of what it looks like. It has to align with who you are. And that is really important when it comes to authenticity, because we can easily get caught up in conforming to expectations we think we need to do. And the reason that we feel empty is because we're wearing a mask of someone else's version of success that is not ours. And so prioritize honest fulfillment for yourself and encourage everyone. I encourage you to go beyond the achievements. It's not about the title. It's not about your paycheck. It's not about your budget or the amount of team that you are responsible for. You have to define what success really looks like for you. And that picture perfect impression, it was so pressure driven because it was a perfect illusion. And 11 years into my career, I am very fortunate that I recognize that now. And I wish I would have done that sooner, because getting into a career and looking at my family and looking at my friends and the vision of those that are at the company long term about to retire, I could not imagine feeling that lack of fulfillment and like I'm not using my full potential and my purpose by confining to what others define as success for me. And so stay true to yourself and what you want success to look like and feel like for you.
That's super, super powerful what you've just shared. And I think really dropping that judgment from yourself as well, that if your career path isn't following the path that other people have laid out as being your ideal path, but actually that's okay. You can do you. And that's the most important thing, is to do you. So do you believe that there were specific events or circumstances growing up that put you on this path?
I do. I'm very fortunate for my upbringing. And my parents separated when I was very young and both remarried also when I was very young. And so I grew up in a dynamic where I had my time split between two families. But again, I am super incredibly fortunate for how my parents navigated that. And I had full support, love, embrace, and they got along in a way that is not common for those that have children with separated parents. And so I think a lot of my upbringing from my family was incredibly influential on my decisions as I became my own adult and I attacked the workforce and grew up. And there's one quote that my dad says all the time, and it has started when I was very young. And I would ask a question and be like, where did that girl get that sweater from? Or how did that guy get there? And my dad's response always was, kiddo, you worry about you. You worry about you. Right? You worry about you. And, and when I was in middle school or high school and you're in the drama of just like being a kid, I would explain the situation. And as always, that response of my dad was, kiddo, you worry about you. And that resonated so much more the older that I got. And I found myself in this crossroads with my career. And I called him and I'm like, here's what I'm up against. And this is what I'm contemplating. And I don't know if this is the right choice. And what should I do? And, I expected some, some like baton toss from him to be like, all right, this is what we're doing next. And he simply said, kiddo, you worry about you. And that voice and that saying resonates with me all day, every day, because for so long, I worried so much about everybody else. I worried about my team, my family, the perceptions of people, what they're going to think of me, if I'm doing the right things and not coming across as selfish or spoiled, and really worrying more about everyone and not worrying about me until I was forced to. And I think that influence from my family was big through my upbringing. And my personal drive from them is just, I strive to leave a legacy for myself that is built through leading by example. In every role that I went in, I wanted to not only talk the talk, because any leader can talk the talk, but how you walk your walk and how you back it up in opportune moments when people think, my leader is going to be so upset, or I'm scared to tell my leader I messed up. Those are the moments that I would show up and meet my team and surprisingly worry about that situation and me of how I'm showing up for that conversation with my team member. And that leading by example ripple effect throughout my teams. And it was odd to me because I think that's how you should, handle certain situations.
It's quite rare. You think it's a very obvious thing. I agree. I think it's a very obvious thing as well. But sadly, it's not as common as you might like to think it would be. The words that are coming into my head as you're talking is, with great power comes great responsibility, and with great responsibility comes great power. And such an important way of being when you're in a leadership role, and really thinking of all aspects of someone's well-being, not just how they're performing at work, but what's that mean for them as an individual as well.
Absolutely. And I think as a leader of people, oftentimes we undervalue how big our platforms are that we get to stand on. You are the person who people's eyes look for, who their ears open up to listen to, who when you give feedback, it means something different. Because when it's heard, the weight that it comes with that title and the responsibility and the perspective of this is a really big leader, that's a lot of pressure for somebody to take and hear. And if you aren't in the moment and present with yourself of the words that you choose to use, of the tone or the body language or the timing, there's a time and a place. And sometimes we do not capture our moment as a leader when we have the best opportunity to do it. And that is what I try to embody as my own person and model for my team. But at the same time, be really honest with my team and say like, hey, this is when you can hype the crew up. Or like, hey, we really missed the mark here. I want to celebrate still what you deliver. But we've got to go back and problem solve so that this doesn't happen again. And it doesn't mean that they are a failure. It's business and it's personal. And I try to make sure they know when you're given feedback or you hear a message from a leader, it's not personal, it's business. And that detachment allows people to be open-minded and to be able to still stay energized and inspired, even when things get tough.
What's your experience of the ways that burnout culture is rewarded or almost promoted in some places?
Burnout is real. And I will start by saying Gallup released a study of research on 2025 look ahead problems that companies are going to face. And what's remarkable is there's 7 headlines and it can go a lot of different directions, that your overall team of anyone, any employee is asking for them to feel valued and for their leader to care about their well-being. That alone is a wake-up call for leaders everywhere. And the term burnout, I understand and relate to. And I do believe it somewhat has gotten, unfortunately, watered down. And the severity of what burnout looks like for different people is real. And I think when you experience it, I look across the company cultures right now, and I see burnt out leaders leading burnt out teams that are also burnt out, and it's trending with the business. And in order to not become a burnt out business, you've got to prioritize your team and your people, because they are the ones who are making the magic happen and keeping the doors open to the business. And I think that in terms of the rewarding system, I think the higher that you climb, or the moment that you become a salaried leader at a minimum level, you are always available. And that comes with the territory. That's why the pay is good. That's why the benefits are there. However, always available mentality is leading to burnout, because there are no checkpoints of anybody saying, hey, it's okay to take a break. It's okay that you're on vacation and you set up coverage plans. You can disconnect. Yeah. It's almost like I'm on vacation, but I'm still available. And I set up all these plans and my team is rolling, full steam ahead. And when something happens, you are still the one that gets the phone call, even if it's for you to say, hand it over to this person who's covering for me. And it's recognized for responding to emails at all hours of the night, even if you don't need to. You feel this rush and this urgency to get an answer through when it might not even be the right one. But we're trying to meet an invisible timeline by just being always available.
You know, we're on opposite sides of the world. We're talking to each other, and it's so easy now to do that. Technology allows us to speak to anybody, anywhere, at any time. The question is, should we be speaking anyone, anywhere, at any time? And like you say, when are the times when we go, no, now is me time and I'm just down and I'm not available? Yes, I've got my phone with me still, but that doesn't mean you have to use it.
Yeah. And I do think that it would be incredible for companies to train leaders or to teach leaders ways to build healthy boundaries in their life as a human, not that don't prioritize the business, right? Because I think, especially with my experience, the entire reason that I created the career I did is because of growing through the business and delivering on the expectations of the role, giving it all I've got all the time. But I can admit, I was horrible at boundaries. My husband and I don't currently have children. We have 2 dogs. We moved across the country for my position in 2019, and all we do is work. But just because we don't have children to go and take to a play one night or go to soccer practice, that doesn't mean that I still don't need time to shut down and revamp myself. And I didn't ever recognize that. And there was nobody on the other side saying, hey, like, you're drained. Your energy level is all like, you just need to take some time and worry about you. And I wish I would have. That, I think a year ago, from October to January, I realized just how much my life was solely defined by my career and my job responsibilities and how available I was all the time. And realistically, even on vacations, on our honeymoon, I still knew what was going on. And it's because I felt like I could not fully detach without repercussions coming through. And so it's better to avoid it and just power through. But when we do that, all of it leads to burnout. And that continues this cycle of burnt out leaders leading burnt out teams because they need a leader to say, it's okay to take care of yourself. You need to tend to your mental well-being. Let's talk about it. And there's no environment that is inviting enough or safe enough psychologically for employees to be able to do that.
I really resonate with so much of your story, including that part where you check yourself into the ER thinking that your days are up and you're having a heart attack. I did the same myself, writing goodbye letters to my kids, thinking that I was going to die from a stress-induced heart attack. And I get that KPIs are really, really important for corporates. And corporates have always been very numbers focused, KPI focused, must hit our targets. So how do you think that they can start to balance that up with what we've just been speaking about and prioritizing someone's mental health, their well-being, making sure that they do stop and enjoy your honeymoon? You do not need to check in on any part of the business. It will survive without you.
I believe that well-being needs to become more than a headline of something companies say they do. It has to become a way they lead, in a way that they talk to their team, and options that they really can have candid conversations that are safe, but that emphasize the importance of incorporating well-being into corporate culture. And you can do that without sacrificing yourself. It's an and situation. I'm really good at my job and I feel mentally, physically, emotionally healthy. And I do believe that emotional intelligence, although a broad umbrella, I do think that when you really drill down into what all emotional intelligence encompasses, it's all learnable. It's all skills that people everywhere can enhance. They can explore, they can apply to their conversations, and you can get a personal connection with your team through utilizing the knowledge of emotional experience. And you can redefine what success looks like for your team. And part of, I believe, at my latest position as a district senior director, I came in 2019, told this district is broken. We need to stabilize. These people need direction. We need to train. Retention is horrible. You need to be able to keep your teams. And not only did we stabilize our district of 10 stores across 2 states, and the sales blew out of the water because we got things on process, that I built in my team by a choice as their leader to redefine what success looks like for our team. And that wasn't something that I was told to do, but it's how I led my team. And through emotional intelligence in different facets, many different facets, I really got to know my direct reports as humans and as really good business owners. And they have to have autonomy. They have to have the room to make mistakes. They have to feel safe enough to come to you and say, hey, boss, I think people are confused. And then be able to give feedback and that leader hear it, because that opens up so much connection to the team. But values the individual who is doing the work day in and day out and reminds you that your work is seen and valued and it's important. And it brings that human element back into delivering results and making people feel like they matter. It has to be both. And I think that's where we get lost in the shuffle, is that we just have to deliver bottom line, improve results, drive sales. That's my job. Mm-hmm. But you are responsible to develop your team and to take care of them as humans too.
And I think that sense of safety is so, so important and so often overlooked, because as a leader, you're not going to get the truth if you haven't created this place of safety for your team to come and to share and to feedback. So it's so crucial. So knowing what you know now, what would you say are the qualities that leaders of today need?
Well, I would say, especially after digging into that Gallup report I mentioned earlier, I geek out with that stuff. And the reason why is because it's different than how businesses are thinking and operating today. When you step into any leadership position, the company at most points has excellent training material on training you how to execute, to deliver, and how to read the sales numbers to make sure you're growing the bottom line, But where there is a gap is on, hey, you're now stepping into this leadership role. Yes, you have all of this responsibility and you're expected to deliver this. And also, you're responsible for people, human beings that are doing the work. And that is not something that everybody just comes with in terms of a skill set. Leadership can be learned, but you have to understand from the first step that leadership shows up through the service of others. And looking at what companies are going to be facing and what challenges specifically leaders are going to struggle with, they have to, one, be very comfortable in their own skin. They have to be okay being authentic, being true to themselves, and not becoming a version of somebody they think they should be. They have to be vulnerable because that encourages your team to be vulnerable back. If you make a mistake, you've got to own it. You've got to share your lessons learned. You've got to be able to say, I don't know the answer, but let's go find it out together and be okay with that. I think the emotional intelligence enhancing will open up the doors for empathy and for compassion and be able to allow you to teach your team how to build resilience. Unless people have had life quote, if you will, or life examples, resilience is really valuable. But people experience that often for the first time inside of a leadership position. And there is no training manual on how to get through it. And so those are a couple. I think leaders everywhere have to have a clear vision for themselves of what they want success to look like and feel like. And they've got to be self-stewards of learning and growing and being intentional, balanced, and resilient themselves.
So true. And exactly like you say, we're not creating the environment to experience what you're going to need to experience as a leader. So like you say, if for the first time you're experiencing it right at the coalface, it can be a little bit scary for everybody, which is where you need to create that safety, that vulnerability, everything that you've just shared. So I really agree with what you've just shared. So I read something that you wrote recently, which I literally drew a sharp breath and gasped because I was like, oh my word. So what you wrote was that success at the expense of self is no success at all. So what's your view? I know we've touched on this a little bit, but what's your view on how we still get awesome results and at the same time care for the mental health and well-being of ourselves and of our teams?
Honestly, the first time that I thought that in my own mind and said it out loud to myself in the mirror, that was a heavy moment because I had gotten to this point where I completely did not even recognize myself. I could look at pictures of myself and I just felt sad for me. And that sounds pathetic, but at the same time, as I stepped out of the hustle and bustle and I started to really evaluate my own fulfillment, I realized just how lost I was in moments that I lived through, but I wasn't present for. I didn't get to actually experience them. And I think a leader's secret weapon is always being curious and not just about what your team does, but who they are as people. And they don't want you to see that they're suffering. They don't want you to know that they are suffering, but they are. And as a leader, it's your responsibility to be able to pick up on those cues and enter a safe conversation so that you can also help them. Because just allowing them to continue to operate, even if they've told you, hey, I don't feel psychologically safe, that should be a pause, stop, drop moment. Because not only are they struggling, but it's impacting everything else that you are trying to deliver on the inside. And it's not worth the expense of yourself. I think the introspective piece allowed me to understand just how off track I had gotten. And it was at the expense of me sacrificing myself. I think about like even holidays and the vacations that I did get to take. Yes, I was physically there, but mentally, I was never present because I was always tapped into my phone and my email and updates and staying up to date and not falling behind. And again, I totally admit my boundaries were not clear and I did not protect them because I didn't think that I had a right to, because my leader didn't lead that way. My leader expected responses still, even if I was out of office. And so it's really hard to do the actions that you want to do when it's not being led for you as an example. But at the same time, when the team does drop any small inkling that something's going on and a leader avoids going into that conversation, it is only a matter of time before they're then surprised. And it could be surprised on a leave of absence, on a terminate, like they quit.
Yeah.
We wonder the retention gaps. It's because people are not having those courageous conversations. And I am here to remind everyone it's okay to have them. And it's actually encouraged as a leader. You will be way more effective and you'll save your people in the long run.
Yeah, we've got to have those conversations. It's not just, it's okay to have them, we must have them. And of course, it doesn't just stay with you, does it? Because it ripples out to your husband, your family, your friends, even your dogs. Like everyone feels the impact. Picking up on something else that I saw you write, it's that sometimes our biggest blind spot isn't what we're doing wrong, it's what we're missing entirely. And you just touched there a little on introspection, but how do you make sure that you now see the things that maybe you could be missing?
I believe that when there's things that you miss in the moment, and if you don't take the time to reflect, you'll never catch it. Unless there's a massive mistake, right? That makes you stop in your tracks and it's right in your face. But I think taking time at the end of the day to tap into yourself, or in the morning, be sure you're on your phone and checking your email. You reflect on, what did I learn today? Or you start asking the questions instead of just, how are you doing? What are you learning right now? What are you focused on right now? And you're able to connect deeper and learn more about people, but you're also close to yourself and what you desire too. And I do journal, not every day with like pages and pages, but I do ask myself at the end of the day, what could I have done better? And the intention behind that is not to make me feel like I dropped the ball or I fell short on something. It's really to tap into, wow, I probably could have been more sensitive in this conversation. And I didn't take the moment to ask, like, hey, are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Whether or not they do, my job is to extend the invitation. And maybe I missed it. But asking myself at the end of the day, what could I have done better today, allows me to stay really close to my purpose. And am I living every day in and out with fulfillment in the way that fulfillment is for me?
So when you left Target, you walked away from a significant severance package. Why was it important for you to do that?
That was honestly one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life. But I also believe it was one of the most important. And when specifically the entire event was happening, I had spoken up around concerns. I had surfaced things that needed attention or accountability or follow up. And nothing happened except a phone call that turned into, at your level, this is where we go from. This is what we can offer. And it's wrapped with a non-disclosure agreement. And I just couldn't let it go because of what I now have identified was my values as a person and as a human were out of line with what direction that was going to go. And I battled with it for a while and it messed me up, but I learned a lot through it. And choosing to leave the way that I did allowed me to protect, I believe, my integrity for what I truly believe in. that aligns with my values as a person. And I was able to now walk freely and share my voice because there are leaders everywhere and there are team members everywhere who I know need it. They need guidance. And if I had accepted what was offered and signed the NDA that came with it, that silences me. And there is so much value in not only the career experience, but on truly understanding what leadership of the future looks like. And I want to protect that at all costs. And I've realized that although I voiced concerns and I voiced, I'm seeking guidance and help and support through this situation. And maybe I didn't get a response, but I still tried. And protecting my values to that at the end of the day were most important to me. There is a difference between right and wrong, and it doesn't make it legal or illegal. That when it doesn't align with who you are, you can only choose to stay in that misery for so long, and who is not willing to do it anymore. And so walking and saving my voice saves what I want to do in the future.
Absolutely. And I believe a theme that I'm really picking up of what we've spoken about so far is about this authenticity. And there's no price that you can put on your authenticity, is there? And being able to be you and to express you in the ways that you need to do that, and to, like you say, have your voice taken away. I know there's no number that someone could offer me that would gift them my voice, because for exactly that same reason. So what do you believe needs to happen so that young people today feel able to be ambitious and desire to be successful, but at the same time to do all of that without sacrificing themselves and who they are?
I would first suggest getting really good at identifying boundaries and get comfortable in saying no, and that it's okay to do so. I think when we enter a time where the workforce is changing, and there was a report from Gallup back in July of this year, I believe, that stated 63% of the workforce in 2025 will be made up of millennials and Gen Z. That alone is an incredibly big shift in the mentality of how those leaders have been raised and what those leaders believe in and what those leaders want and desire from a career. And companies have to be able to embrace that instead of fear it. And so I would challenge every leader as they start to decide their career path and they want to go and climb the ladder and achieve success. Define what success looks like for you and the boundaries around yourself and your responsibility to be able to do both. You can be real good at your job and you can still say, I'm signing off for the night. I'm going to do dinner with my family. I'm going to show up for this event. Then you got to be really good at being planful and organized so that you do deliver on your responsibilities. But it's your life. It's not defined by the moon that produces your paycheck. It is about the impact that you make on other people, and it is about the legacy that someday you're going to leave behind.
Which leads me really nicely on to, what does it mean for you now in terms of building a legacy, something that you're going to leave behind?
I always ask this question, but I've never been asked it. I want my legacy to be replicating that I am and always have been committed to creating a better working world where people can see that you can achieve both professional and personal success at the same time, but that you can do it by being you, authentically you. I think checking boxes or managing processes is a task, but nobody looks back on their life and says, I'm so glad I got that agenda accomplished back in 2023. I want people to focus on the impact of their platform, of the eyes and the ears that are inspired by them every single day and that are proud to say, yeah, the business is really hard. I'm so grateful for my boss. I'm so grateful for my leader because they know that I'm human and they're also taking care of me amongst the chaos.
For sure. So just to kind of wrap all of this up, what would you like to go back and tell your younger self now about values, your health, authenticity, anything else that you think is important to share with your younger self?
Well, no surprise here. I would start with kiddo, worry about you. You worry about you. That I also think that the authenticity piece of individuals is a superpower. And recognizing that it's just you that is responsible to bring that to the surface is exciting. And I would tell my younger self, take off the mask that you feel like you need to be wearing and just be yourself. And know that it's okay to embrace imperfection. It's okay that you can be effective, but sometimes you've got to run along the way.
I think this is so true. And honestly, Brenna, I've absolutely loved this conversation with you. I think I could talk all day and all night with you on this subject because it's so, so important to remember who you are, to not try and mold yourself into anybody else, to be authentic in who you are and to value who you are, and that there's many aspects of you. You're not defined by your career, your job title, or any of those other aspects, and to really embrace everything that your life involves, not just the paycheck and that side of things, but at the same time, recognizing how important it is to see people as people, not as numbers or machinery almost in the machine of the corporate, but just to really see each person as the individual that they are and the talents and strengths that they each bring to the team, the collective, the corporate. So thank you so much for this conversation. I think people everywhere are going to be inspired by it. And I hope we'll take a moment, I suppose, to take it on board, especially as we go into 2025 and the challenges that are no doubt still ahead of us and what that means for each of us as leaders, whether we're leaders in corporates, leaders in our families, leaders in our communities. They're all exactly valid in the same way. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.